Okay, hello. Still good morning, I think. And it's still early morning for me. I usually wake a little bit earlier. So I want to start slow. I want to start with a story. And my story begins in the early days of the World Wide Web, that primordial soup of 1993. But back then, we had this incredible tapestry of interconnected documents, a vast universe of information just waiting to be explored. But something was missing. It was a bit like a library where you could only read the books. You could never check one out or leave a note in the margin. The web, this remote doesn't work. The web was a one-way street. The brilliant minds behind the web, Tim Berners-Lee and his team, had given us the foundations for a revolution. But that revolution itself, it was still on hold. Something was missing. And that revolution only came 2 years later with the introduction of that seemingly unassuming element, that form element, in HTML2, only in HTML2. Thanks, Eric. I learned it from Eric in a podcast years ago. With the introduction of the form element in HTML2, the web was now a place to consume, and not just to consume information, but also to create and interact. We could suddenly send feedback to a website owner, participate in an online discussion, or, I don't know, purchase stuff. And the floodgates were opened. We suddenly had a standardized way of sending data back to the server. We could communicate with others, connect with other people in ways we had never imagined. We could contribute new content, but that newfound power also brought its new challenges. The web was now a two-way street, a bustling marketplace of ideas and interactions. But that newfound power also brought its challenges because, well, with the ability to communicate, how do you ensure that the information that we're sending is accurate, trustworthy, and reliable? And with the ability to contribute came the problem of moderation. How do we make sure, how do we manage the vast amounts of information being generated and shared? Well, the story of the form element is really the success story of the web, because the story of the form element, the form element is what turned the web into the vibrant, collaborative space we know and love today. This is what turned the web into the most popular application delivery platform we have today. But it is also the story of how a simple tool can unleash a revolution, and how that revolution is still unfolding as we continue to grapple with the questions of validation and moderation in an ever-evolving digital landscape. Now, I'll introduce myself. My name is EVYATAR. I'm a software engineer at Meta, or that birthday reminder app that David mentioned. Yes, and I'm also probably the only Flow user in the room. So yes, thank you, David. But more seriously, I'm married to my beautiful wife Shoham, with which I travel the world, and I am not captive by this magnificent creature. Take a moment, she deserves it. Yes, thank you. Well, I'm here to talk about form validation. You saw the title of the talk, and specifically, we have two types of validation. Well, we have server-side validation, which is used for integrity and security. We do that on the server to make sure that everything the user sends to the server is okay, both to save on the database, parse in the server, and also present to other users. And we also have client-side validation that is used mostly for user experience, so they know that what they're sending will be accepted by the server. But if any of you are only doing client-side validation, please leave the talk, open your laptops, go and fix that, because client-side validation is not enough. You gotta do your server-side validation, and luckily, I'm talking about both today because I wrote a library, or really it's a framework, I don't know, you tell me, David, that does both. It's called VEST. It's a form validation library that's inspired by the syntax and style of unit testing libraries like Mocha and Jest, hence the name VEST. Now, traditionally, historically, when we were working with form validation in our apps, let's say it's a React app, well, we had our change handler in which we have our state, and then we do some form validation. So first of all, we set the data in the state. And after that, we want to do some validation, so we write some validation logic and add some more validation logic. And yeah, that gets very gnarly very quickly if you're not using any standardized solution. And I say no, let's not. This must not be the way of how we write form validation. There must be a better way of writing form validation. And well, I think there are three inherent problems with form validations the way we see it and the way we imagine it. And first of all, it lacks structure. Because, well, when we go out and want to write form validation, we don't know the future, we don't know how things are going to be in a year or so, and we don't even have a standardized syntax for writing our form validation. We don't know where to put it. Should it be a part of the feature code, but what if we want to use it somewhere else? Yeah, we make it work eventually, of course. We either put some of it inside, some of it in the library, but then we come back to maintain it years later, months later, weeks later, days later, I don't know. And then you just want to add a field or a field that depends on another field, or you want to change something that you did not plan for because product, right? And, well, you got to disassemble all the spaghetti code that you wrote and reassemble it in a way that will now work again. And unfortunately, this is also true for tests because, well, forms are the interaction-heavy parts of our apps. That's where users touch, click, scroll, type, navigate. They do everything, and this is also where the money comes from. Like, we love our shiny UIs and state updates and everything, but really forms are the money makers of our apps. But they are also the hardest to test because, well, every time we want to test something, we have to simulate the user events, and we have to make sure that that's difficult. That's difficult to test, and if something is difficult to test, then we don't test it. And if something is not tested, it breaks. And if something breaks, especially in the money maker part of our apps, well, we lose money. We lose our jobs. We want our jobs. So yeah, write tests and write better forms. So I wrote a library, but surely there is already a form validation library, right? There must be. Hi, you're smiling, Eric. There is not just one more. There are thousands more. Actually, forms are inherently a complex problem. There are many intricacies in form validation, and there are many takes on it. And this is a screenshot from, I don't know, 4 years ago, 9,742. Today they truncate it to only 6,000, so I cannot show the real number of form validation libraries, but there are hundreds upon hundreds of pages of form validation libraries, and the list keeps growing because, well, everybody, always, like me, thinks they have the good solution, the right solution, the better solution, but use mine, really. So we have traditionally, I think, 3 types of form validation libraries. 3 types and one more that I'll go back to in a second. And in order to explain why I created Vest, and that's even before I'm talking about Vest itself, but in order to explain to you why I built Vest and why Vest is different, I want to show you what types of form validation libraries are there. And the first one I would say these are the functional matchers. Just functions like validator.js or stuff like that. These are really, really, really good. These are amazing. These are basically the core of form validation because, well, they give us, they check for a Boolean. They check if something is what it is. They check if a string is an email. They check if the number is a number, or if a string is longer than something. Basically, it gives you a Boolean response to something. But that's not enough. That does not have any structure. It does not represent our feature. What do we do with user interaction? Well, of course. So an obvious abstraction of the extension of that is schema validation. We traditionally had Joy and Yup, and now we have Zod and Valibot and all the other ones. And these are great solutions. Not for the front end, though. Because, well, the user does not type in a schema. The user does not type, and then we have to validate the entire schema, right? The user types one letter in the username field, and then they type another letter and another letter, and then we may have some async validation because we have to go to the server. And while at it, the user also types in the password because the username already taken is still loading. So this is not something that schema checks. The user types in fields, not its schemas. It's really good for server-side validation. Really, really amazing solution, but it lacks something. In regards of user interaction, we don't want to check the entire schema every time the user types just a single field. And this is mostly what it looks like. There are many variations of that, but yeah. And the third one, which is the most popular type of form validation today, is like, it's not really form validation, it's, I would say, framework-specific form state managers like React Hook Forms, Validate for Vue, all the other ones, that basically give you some handler events. They give you components, whatever it is that they choose, to manage your form for you. And then they manage the form state. But then you're kind of vendor locked, because what if you want to use that validation logic both in your Angular app and your React app, or both in your server and in the client? That's kind of difficult to share information between those two. And also, if you want to break out of this, like if you want to do something that they don't support, well, you're out of luck. That's going to be a hell of a lot difficult. So it's really nice, it's really good if your use case is building something quickly, but it lacks that part. And there's another type like of form validation libraries that I think is not mentioned here. The only one that I think that does not match here is, again, Eric, that's final form, because it does not force you to use any specific library. It manages the state outside, so it's pretty cool. Eric built it. Really, really awesome library. But I took a slightly different turn a few years ago. And, well, let's talk about unit tests, because, I don't know, when I started writing unit tests, I don't know, around 10 years ago, I saw this. We had this describe. Inside of it, we try to describe our feature or the thing that we're testing, and then we write a test, and in the test, we write the description of the test itself, what we're testing. And then we, inside of it, write our assertion. For example, in our calculator example, we're checking that add 1 and 1 and 2 equals 3. So that's nice, and we can do this as many times as we want. And this is basically taking our feature and breaking it down into multiple parts and trying to validate or enforce each part of it. And I thought, well, wait a minute, this is kind of how I think about forms, because, well, we have our feature or our form, and we have different fields that we want to validate. What if we could do that? So let's try this. Just go with me here. What if I could just say, I'll describe user registration. Cool. And I'll test that the username is required. Cool. And I'll test that the user must be at least 3 characters. That's also cool. And then I'll say username is not empty and username is longer than 3. And I'll pass, of course, the data of the user into our test suite. And of course, I'll tell the test suite what field we're actually validating. Nice. And just a few renames, so instead of expect, we'll say enforce, because we're enforcing something. And instead of describe, because we're not really describing, we're just creating a suite here, well, this is vest. I just took the same syntax, the same concept of a form unit test, and applied it into form validation, and it turned out very, very interesting. I want to show it to you, how it actually looks like, and we're going to build it together along with server actions. So I'll put my phone here. Hopefully it doesn't ring. And I'll show you what we have. So I built this form. It's really an empty form. It has no validation just yet. It has no features. It does not do anything other than show you the text that you're writing. And we're going together to add vest into it and see how much time we get. So this is the form. It's pretty basic, no actions, no nothing. I have an input component that doesn't do much. It only updates the state with a handle change. And just to show you and save us time later on, I added a pending prop that shows a spinner on the input. I added a few class names, so let's say error, it paints it red. There is valid that paints it green, and there is warning that paints it orange. Okay, cool. And lastly, we have a messages or a message. Sorry, for example, username is already taken. Cool. So we got all this, and this is everything that I have prepared for you. The rest we're going to build together. Now we have a change handler, just a use form hook that I wrote. It takes the state and updates it. That's it. So we'll open a new file. We'll call it, it doesn't really matter, but let's call it registration form suite, and let's import vest. So import the main parts of vest. You already saw them. So let's do create, test, enforce from vast. And let's also turn off Copilot because it will be annoying. Okay. And let's export const suite equals create. And let's call it, let's say, yeah, you know what, user registration. If I have typos, by the way, let me know. I won't fix them, but I just want to know that I can type. And let's do data. Let's take the data from the form, and it's going to be of type user. That's like, I don't know, username, password, confirmation, and email. And let's flow. So I'll do test, and I'll test, we're saying username, right? Username, username is required. Cool. And all I do here is enforce. This shouldn't be here, right? Enforce that data.username is not blank. No, 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 blank. Cool. Now, before I continue to the other tests in the suite, let's see how it actually looks like when we try to apply it. So we go to our change handler, and when we're setting the state, let's also call our suite and pass it our next state, actually just the object value of our form, which is the same thing. And now, all we have to do here, so for example, in our input, let's go and do messages, or message, sorry. And let's do suite.get messages for username. And now if I start typing, you won't see anything because it's not empty. But if I remove everything, you'll already see username is required. And this is with only one line of code in my React application, and it's completely separate from our React application. So this is really nice. But that's not the fun part yet. We'll get to more advanced scenarios just in a second. So let's do username and then say, yeah, let's do longer than. Must be longer than 3 characters. And then let's say longer than 3. Yes, longer than 2. Must be at least. I don't want to type a lot. Okay, and let's do the same for password while we're at it. So I'm typing password. And let's say longer than or equals. And let's say 5, because passwords must be very strong. So 5 characters is good. Yeah, well, don't laugh at me. You'll see my password in a second, and then you'll laugh. Okay, so I'm taking this, and let's do the same for password. And so, what? I have a typo? No, I don't have a typo, I think. Okay, what?
Password validation is on email.
Password val. Oh, that's a problem. Yes. Okay. Yeah. Of course. So let's see. So we saw that as we type, it changes. So it only validates the correct validation. So we get a different message, as you see. And we see here password is required. And let's do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's not my password. But you're saying it, and this is kind of annoying because, well, I was telling you that the important thing about form validation is user interaction. So when the user touches, stuff should happen correctly. And what happened here is not nice. I'll refresh the page and you'll see it again. I type inside of the username field and the password field lights up. And I told you that this should not happen. For example, you should not validate stuff that the user didn't touch yet. And the thing is that this is a valid choice, but sometimes we do want to validate everything. For example, when we go to the server, but in a client we shouldn't. So let's do this. Let's tell Vast, well, only validate the fields that the user is actually touching. So what we want to do here, we take only, same as you have in unit tests. Again, I'm taking the same syntax of unit tests, and say field name. Now field name, it does not exist just yet. We'll pass it to the suite. So let's do field name is a string. And let's do it optional for now, because it's going to be optional later. And what we want to do here, when we call our suite, let's pass the field name. And now if I start typing inside of the username field, only it will light up. And when I type inside of the password field, only it will light up. Okay, cool. Now, how do you know it's valid? You don't know it's valid. Nothing tells you it's valid. So let's add some colors. And now the thing is that Vest is not a UI framework. It's actually You can run it on everything that runs JavaScript on Node as well. So it does not touch the DOM, it does not change classes. But I did give you some very useful utilities. So let's do const class name equals class names. It's a function that I write with best. And I pass it our current validation result. And what I do here is when it's valid, let's pass. It was valid, right? And the class name that I showed earlier. And let's say when it's invalid, let's do error. And when it's warning, and you'll see what's warning later. When it's warning, let's do warning. And let's do this. Class name, okay. Let's do, yeah, you know what? Let's do this. Let's do it faster. I'll just show off. Class name equals cn and call it with a string. Okay, so if I now type inside of username, you'll see that it's red because it's invalid, and if I keep typing, it's now painted green. So that's cool. Let's do it the same with password. Hello. Yes, cool. Now, confirmation doesn't do anything because we did not write any test for confirmation, not for email yet. We will in a second. But I want to focus first on the username one, because sometimes we don't only do form validation locally. We sometimes want to do stuff on the server. And, well, we got to do stuff that we don't have information for in the client. We don't want to send all the list of all users to our client. We want to do it on the server. So instead, what we'll do here is write an async test. So what we'll do here is write another test for username. Let's say username already taken. Okay, and let's say it's an async test. Now, we got to write our server-side action as well. So I prepared an empty file. That's add user, sorry. Does user exist? Action. I created an empty file. Oh, okay, it's not an empty file. It was supposed to be empty, but you can just see it. And it's a server action, a React server action. I don't know why I have it already filled. But what it is basically just a server-side file, server action for React. It's annotated with use server, which means for Next.js, for example, that it will create some API endpoint for that. And inside of it, we have just an async function that returns a Boolean if the users already exist. It goes actually to the database and waits a little just so you can see the spinner. So we got that. And all we have to do here is, because it's a server action, and Vest works very well with server actions, what we can do here is call this action. And later on, you'll see why it's important that it's a server action. Let's do data.username. Cool. This is nice. Const exists equals await that. And what it'll do now is enforce exist is falsy. And if everything is correct, we'll have to see that validation result for an existing username. Now, how do we know which usernames actually exist? We got a users list, and I am the only username at the moment. So if I type, well, nothing is happening, really. Why is that? Well, the reason is because, well, we got to have a state update when the validation result ends. So what I'm going to do now is go back to the form, and when the validation result ends, let's do done. And then I'm going to update the state. So first of all, let's take the pending. Let's show the pending state. So pending equals suite.isPending for username. So if the username field is pending, and in Vest you can have each field pending individually, which is pretty cool. And now here we have to update the state. Now we're not really changing anything, so let's have just a very basic state. There are more advanced ways of doing it, but I want to save us some time. So set validation state, and let's do suite.get. And right here, let's set the validation state with suite.get. Now we're calling our server action whenever we're typing inside of the username field, and you're starting to see the spinner. And let's see now when I type my name, and username is already taken. Just like that, I did not write any fetch request, not anything, just using server actions and Next.js, that automatically solved that part for me. And you're seeing that, and if I type another username, it's green again. Now, you're seeing that if I type inside of the username field and removing and adding, we already know that my specific username is already taken. That's a bummer, because I already know that. We don't need to validate it twice. And what you would normally do is somehow memorize it, save it locally, but what if the library did it for you? Well, it does. So what I'll do here is test.memo and just pass it the list of attributes to memorize by, and in our case it's data.username. And if I type my username, you'll see it's spinning, and if I type another username, it will see, oh sorry, I did not wait for it to finish. Okay, so we'll see that username is already taken, and now if I remove the other one, the one at the end, it will be instantaneous. It will not go to the server unless I provide a new value. So this is pretty cool. This is saving a lot of time for you. Cool. So let's do also email, and you'll say probably that email is already a validation in the browser, and this is correct, but we're going to very soon use this validation on the server as well. And on the server, well, you don't have the HTML email type element, so it will not check for it, and then somebody can insert stuff if you're not validating on the server. Again, if you're not validating on the server, you should leave the talk and do that again. Now let's do test for email. And let's say email is not valid. And the thing is that, well, VEST does not inherently give you an email validation, because in most cases we write forms that do not need email, but email validation is like this 60, the full spec of email validation is like 60 lines of regular expressions, and I don't want to bundle it into the library, so it's kind of a small extension to VEST. All you have to do here, just to get email on your library, is do import vest enforce email, and then it will automatically somehow add it to enforce, and right now we're going to have is email. Cool. So if I type now inside email, hello, did I not add the strings, right? Yeah, I should add it as well, the message string for email, and also for confirm. Oh, cool. So I'm now testing email is not valid, of course. Adding email at email.email. Yeah, that's a valid email. Cool. Nice. And confirmation, let's write something fast for confirmation. For example, that's something that's very difficult to do with schema validation libraries, testing that a field matches another field. So let's do that. It's going to be super difficult. Let's do confirm. Let's say passwords do not match. And what we want to say here is that, yeah, confirm equals password. Cool. So now if I type inside of username, let's see, that's my username, and it's already taken, okay. Email at alush.com, example 1, and we're seeing that passwords do not match. Wait. Example? What? Oh my, you should have told me that before. Data.password, okay. So passwords do not match, okay. Password. Now, sometimes in passwords we also have strength validation. Like, we still allow for the user to submit the form even if the password is weak. And this is something that I've never seen in other places. Like, we always have the form validation, all the fields that are required, and if something is not throwing its only warning, then that's going to be a different hatch, and we're going to combine it later on somehow. And I thought that's kind of annoying. So first of all, let's see if we can disable the submit. So let's go to the submit button and say it's disabled if suite.is valid. And let's say if it's not valid. So it's going to be now disabled because the suite is not valid. And like, for example, if I type, again, my username, it's becoming tedious. I'll copy that. Now we want to do like password strength validation, but first of all I want to show you, okay, the register button is enabled, and the next thing I want to do is just show you how we do password strength. So I'm taking the password, and then I'm saying it's weak. Let's add a number, and what I'll do here is matches, and then let's do a regular expression with a number, and just tell Vest, well, this one is actually, no, not that one. Yes, this one. Now this is a warning validation, so I got this password, and now it's painted orange. And if I type inside of the other fields, so yes, it's pasted, it will allow me to pass the validation, even though we see something is not wrong, not right here, because this is only warning, this is not failing. So this is pretty unique. This is pretty unique to the form validation space. And yeah, let's fix this. So now we have all of the fields passing, and we can send it to the server. And well, I just submitted it, and we can see that if I go to the users, let's see, yeah, no, it did not add the user. Why did it not add the user? I don't know why it did not add the user. Oh, right, I did not submit it. I did not even submit it. That's the real reason. I did not write the submit function. So let's see. Let's go back to our form action, to our form, and let's add the action. So let's add a new function to the submit, to the form. Let's add function submit, and let's do submit action, and we're taking the form data. This is something that React is giving us, and what we're going to do here is basically call a server-side action that I already created. It's an add user action, a React action, also React server action annotated with use server, and I'm going to call it. So add user action. It's going to be an async function, and I'm going to pass the form data as it is, and later on we'll see what else we can do with it. If we got enough time, we got 4 minutes, let's try to run it pretty quickly. So I'll go to the form, and I do action, and this is accepting a React server action. It should accept a React server action. Cannot find O, right, because I need to take it from the hook. Cool, submit action, and we need to return it from the hook. So much bureaucracy. Okay. Again, I have the email, right? I had the email. Yes, there it is. Password 1, and I got a register. Now, it was instantaneous, so you might have not seen it, but let's go to the users. And now we have ALUSH1, that's the second user. Okay. That's pretty cool. Wait with it, because I want to show you the next cool thing about React Server Actions and React 19 that I added is that, well, I want to see a spinner. I want to see, so let's go to the add user action on the server that actually adds it to the server, and let's wait for a second, just so you can see something pretty cool that they are doing. Await, by the way, wait is a package of mine. You can also set timeout on await, but set timeout with await, but I wrote this package before. It's on NPM if you want to use it. There is no reason at all to use it. It's just shorter than set timeout. And now we'll go back to the form, and inside of that we have the submit button. And what they gave us is the use form status hook. And the use form status hook allows us to just access the current status of the form that we're in. And because we're in a form element, we can do pending, and then say if we're pending, we can do submit, and also disable the button directly when submitting. So again, let's type really quick. That's a taken one, and then the email. Yes. Wait. Oh, it's already taken, of course. Password 1. And now you'll see that it's submitting, and I did not change anything. Oh, wait, we got some server issue. Unique constraint on fields email. Yeah, of course, because I used the same email twice. Yeah, I shouldn't. That's on the server. You see, that's good server-side validation. So let's do this. Let's do that. That's pretty cool, and it's already there, and you started submitting. We got 1 more minute. I want to show you something pretty cool. Now, let's say we don't do any client-side validation at all. Let's remove this, because sometimes our users will try to mimic our APIs and just call directly. Well, this allows you to handle this as well and run that same validation on the server as if you were running it in the client. And what this means is that we can run our suite here on the server, so suite, and we can pass all the details just as well as we did in the client. So we can run it and run static. We're running it statically without the internal state of VEST, and that's going to be really, really tight. But let's do confirm and confirm. Let's try all of these. Let's try all the keyboard shortcuts that I know. No, not that one. Okay. Okay, confirm. Yes, okay. And let's also await it. And now what we want to do is const res okay equals. Now, if not res dot is valid what? Then let's say if it's valid, let's add the user. Okay, you're saying the same thing. I'm saying I didn't think it was funny. And now let's serialize the results. So suite serializer, and let's return serialize, and let's turn the result. Okay, we're passing it back to the client, and now in the client, what we're going to do is const res equals this, and then what we're going to do is suite serializer dot resume. We're going to resume what the server started. Really, we're going to take that same result state with our suite, and if everything works correctly, then we're going to set the validation state, and that's going to be the most interesting part because we're not running any validation in the client. Set validation state with suite.get, and what should happen now is that if I do like taking an existing username, there's no validation in the client, there should not be any validation in the client, and then I'm typing an email, so let's do a completely distinct email, so password 1, and oh wait, it's disabled, right? Yeah, it shouldn't be, that's because, wait, let's not disable it. Yeah, okay. So now we're registering and we're getting the results from the server. VEST is just continuing in the client that same work that it did in the backend. So it's not it's stopping it in the backend, but knowing exactly how to show you the validation results in the client, because it's sort of somewhat like server actions that VEST in the server is speaking with VEST in the client through the serialized results, serialized state, and showing it together. VEST is pretty cool. I don't want to take any of Karen's time, so if you want to see more about VEST, learn more about VEST, just go to the VEST documentation website. Also at the start, if you want to talk with me, go ahead later on. And if you want VEST stickers, yeah, I got a bunch of those. So thank you so much. Bye-bye.